Before I spill this wild story, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to hear is straight up insane. Ever seen an HOA push the wrong dude too far? Ever watched a Karen try to dominate a man who legally owns the ground she's standing on? Well, buckle up, fam. This one gets messy. The neighborhood always looked peaceful from the outside, but that peace shattered the morning the HOA decided to pick a fight with the wrong property owner. The first sign of trouble wasn't an argument, or a confrontation, or a meeting. It was a bright orange violation notice slapped dead center on my garage door, flapping in the breeze like a challenge. The HOA claimed my shed was unapproved. They claimed my truck violated aesthetics. They claimed my fence was too tall. They claimed everything they could think of, because Karen, the HOA president, loved having someone to bully. I wasn't surprised. Karen lived 3 houses down but acted like she owned every inch of land from the curb to the horizon. With her stiff blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, and clipboard glued to her hand, she patrolled the neighborhood like she was the sheriff of her own tiny kingdom. Everyone feared her. Everyone except me. Because I knew something she didn't. My land, my home, and every improvement on it existed long before the HOA was even formed. Their rules meant nothing here, but letting them dig their own grave? That part one enjoyed. The next week was a slow spiral into madness. Karen strutted up and down my driveway taking pictures of everything from my mulch to my mailbox. The HOA board members whispered as they walked past my yard, writing notes, shaking their heads dramatically, pretending to care about community standards. They had no idea they were walking on thin ice. One afternoon, while I was working in my garage, I heard footsteps behind my house. Quiet, rushed, suspicious. I stepped outside and saw 2 HOA volunteers pacing around with a measuring tape, trying to document my fence height. They didn't see me. They didn't know that every step they took was technically trespassing. They didn't know that according to the original deed, the old survey markers placed the property line a full 12 feet farther out. In other words, they were already deep on my land. But I didn't stop them. Not yet. When someone thinks they're in control, the fall hits even harder. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. The HOA demanded I remove my shed in 48 hours or face escalating fines and a potential lien. That was their biggest mistake. That shed wasn't just a structure. It was a piece of my family's history. My father built it with his own hands decades ago. He stored his tools there. I stored my memories there. And no clipboard queen was going to erase that. The next morning, I called the one person who could settle the matter permanently. The county surveyor. Not a private company. Not someone influenced by HOA politics. The official county man, the one whose word carried legal weight. When he arrived, he inspected my documents, the original land deed, the pre-HOA plot lines, the permanent easements. He nodded slowly, his eyes hardening. "They've been using property that isn't theirs," he said quietly. "This is going to be interesting." We walked the entire perimeter of the land. As he placed markers, bright orange flags snapping in the wind, the truth unfolded inch by inch. Not only was my fence legal, half the HOA's beloved walking trail, the one they bragged about in every brochure, the one they maintained with homeowner dues, wasn't even theirs. It was built entirely on my land. The day the HOA came storming toward my property, full of confidence and fake authority, I stood waiting beside the county surveyor. Karen marched at the head of the group like a general charging into battle. Behind her trailed the vice president, the treasurer, and 2 volunteers armed with clipboards. They were ready to attack, ready to threaten, ready to intimidate. They weren't ready for the truth. Karen opened her mouth, ready to unleash a lecture about compliance. But the surveyor cut her off. His voice broke through the tension like a hammer striking steel. "This land is not under HOA jurisdiction." The silence that followed was cold and sharp. Karen blinked, stunned. The treasurer's jaw dropped. The volunteers looked at each other as if the ground had just shifted under their feet. But that was just the beginning. The surveyor handed them the official boundary report. Every flag marked on my land. Every inch of encroachment documented. Every HOA action illegal. Karen's face drained of color as she flipped through the pages. Her authority evaporated in real time. For years, she had built her identity on controlling others. Now, she couldn't even control the expression on her own face. But the real blow came when the surveyor pointed toward the walking trail behind the neighborhood. "That entire path is on private land," he said. "Unauthorized use. Could be considered trespassing." The HOA's board looked like a pack of animals backed into a corner. Shock, fear, helplessness. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. Not yet. The moment the county surveyor closed his folder and walked away, the HOA knew their empire had cracked. But denial is a stubborn thing. Karen, shaking with anger, tried to regain control. She argued. She demanded clarification. She insisted that the HOA had always maintained that trail, as if maintenance magically created ownership. But none of it mattered. The truth was written in black and white. They messed with the wrong property owner, and the fallout was just beginning. That night, the HOA held an emergency board meeting. I didn't attend, but I didn't need to. The whispers spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. People were tired of the harassment, the fines, the intimidation. Seeing Karen finally slapped down by the law gave everyone a spark of hope. A shift was coming. The next morning, the HOA sent a friendly letter asking to discuss a resolution. This was their attempt to escape consequences. But I wasn't playing their game anymore. I drafted my own letter, formal, airtight, and legally precise. It included 3 demands. 1. Immediate removal of the walking trail structure from my land. 2. Financial compensation for years of unauthorized use. 3. A written acknowledgement that my property was not under HOA authority. 48 hours. That was the deadline. When Karen received the letter, she lost whatever composure she had left. She stormed up my driveway, this time without her clipboard, without her sunglasses, without her army behind her. Just fury. Pure, raw fury. But the law is a beautiful thing. She couldn't threaten me anymore. She couldn't fine me. She couldn't touch a single inch of my land. She knew it and I knew it. 3 days later, the HOA broke. The walking trail was shut down and dismantled. Boards ripped up. Signs removed. Benches hauled away. The same HOA that once bragged about the trail now tore it apart in shame. Residents watched from their porches, whispering, pointing. Some even smiled. For the first time, the community saw the truth. The HOA had been abusing power for years. Then came the second blow. The treasurer resigned. Then the vice president. Then 2 board members who claimed they didn't know. Finally, after days of pressure, after late-night arguments, after realizing she had no support left, Karen herself resigned as HOA president. The queen of control stripped of her throne. But I wasn't done. I pushed for a full audit. The HOA had used homeowner dues to maintain a trail built illegally on my property. That money had to be accounted for. When the audit results came back, the HOA was forced to issue refunds to the entire neighborhood. Homeowners who once feared the HOA now showed up at my door to thank me. The community didn't just turn against Karen. They turned against the entire system she created. With the trail removed, the bylaws corrected, and the HOA weakened, the neighborhood finally began to breathe again. People painted their mailboxes whatever color they wanted. They planted flowers. They left their trucks parked in their driveways without looking over their shoulder. Freedom returned like fresh air. And me? I stood on my land, the land my father passed down, the land the HOA tried to claim, and I felt something stronger than satisfaction. I felt peace. Because the HOA didn't just lose a battle. They lost their grip on the entire neighborhood. They messed with the wrong property owner, and they lived to regret it deep in their bones. And now, whenever Karen walks by, she avoids eye contact. She keeps to the sidewalk. She clutches her grocery bags and moves fast, as if the very ground beneath her might rise up and remind her of her worst mistake. She thought she could control me. She thought she could intimidate me. She thought she could bury me in fines and threats. But she forgot one thing. You can't bully the person who owns the land you stand on.